Hey everyone, here's one of the strangest things I could find about every killer in DBD. Trapper's mask is presumably meant to be made of a bear skull, however this looks nothing like a bear skull, or even any skull for that matter, with the nose being entirely smoothed over. It's definitely bone too due to what Bubba's trailer says. There are a few cracks, but otherwise it looks like a mask made of the same piece of bone, which is bizarre. What is this? Wraith is kind of weird because nothing about him makes sense. For one, Wraith's perks don't seem to quite align with his character, with him never mentioned to have been a hunter or tracker of any kind. Then his map also doesn't really align with his design like the other two originals do. It seems likely he was originally meant to release quite differently, with him seeming out of place. Billy's family were originally referred to as the Adams in Coldwind Farms lore, despite them really being the Thompsons, with the map even being called the Thompson House. This entry also sets his lore in 1948, which doesn't seem to align with everything else we see, which aligns more so to somewhere around the 1970s or 80s to the modern day. Nurse has two sets of prestige outfit descriptions, with Nia's also seeming to reference her. Not only this, but they're incredibly strangely worded and almost poetic. There's also a nurse cosmetic where despite her heart entirely missing, she's able to function normally. Just another weird feature of the realm. Myers is strange because he's one of the only killers who wasn't invited or taken into the realm. It's even suggested by Benedict Baker that he simply wandered in on his own accord. Myers also seems weirdly out of proportion, with many of his weapons being incredibly oversized, and even his physical body being much wider and bulkier than his 1978 self. Hag is said to have lived in the Pale Rose map, however nowhere in the map is there a sign of her actually inhabiting it. Doctor's two iridescent add-ons are both chess pieces, as well as a single other common piece, yet we never get mention in his lore of him playing or enjoying chess. Huntress's skill achievement, Skilled Huntress, requires 20 downs from more than 24 meters away on all platforms, all aside PlayStation, where it requires 100. Some of her add-ons, the Soldier's Putty and Infantry Belt, also seem to just appear on her normally, so why does she need them? The hatchet on her belt is also far smaller than the ones in the trials. Bubba originally had the same add-ons as Billy, and even some specific to him, like the Thompson's mix. This was likely due to Bubba seemingly having quite a rushed release. Freddy originally had incredibly unique interactions. One was with the dream world and the perk Adrenaline. Adrenaline provided an additional ability to wake up from the dream world when triggered, despite this not being mentioned anywhere on the perk. This was a result of it being used in the film by Quentin to keep himself awake. Pig is able to roar in Dead by Daylight. It sounds rather inhuman, and that's because it is, with it actually just being a sound effect in the films. In the realm though, Pig seems to actually produce the roar herself. Pig also has outfits that originally belonged to other Jigsaw disciples. Despite this, she wears them in the realm. Clown does not actually wear a clown outfit, but instead a ringmaster's. He presumably stole this from the same one as his caravan. He also doesn't have a butterfly knife, but instead just a regular old flip knife. Spirit's map doesn't actually feature the window that Rin fell through during her death that caused shards of glass to cut into her. You can look around the whole central estate, and what you'll notice is that there isn't any glass at all, but instead just shoji doors and windows everywhere, which are made of wood and paper. Despite Legion being 4 different people, they only have 2 unique sets of voices, a male and a female voice. Further, the only Legion member we don't know the last name of is Joey. Plague only blinks in one of her eyes. This seems to be due to one of them being infected. Ghostface's original leaked name was simply The Ghost, following the theme of all killers prior to have the and just one name after. This was maybe a licensing thing. Demogorgon doesn't seem to be a Demogorgon we know. It has references to multiple different Demogorgons in the show, but we don't actually know which specific one it is, if any. But hey, I guess there's stranger things. The Oni's feet. Okay, I know. The Oni's feet are sometimes depicted as having clawed toes, yet other times as just regular human appearing feet. Deathslinger still has a limp in the realm, with his leg not being fixed by the entity, like many other injuries are when characters arrive here. This is why he wears a brace. However, he still has the limp even in his skins in which he doesn't need a brace. In his blighted skin, his brace is viewed as such a key part of him that his whole lower leg actually becomes a completely metal one instead. Pyramid Head is the the only killer in the game who is incapable of nodding. This is likely due to his, well, pyramid head and its dimensions. Blight has his eyes covered in his base cosmetic, despite the fact that they're visible in his icon. You can see this difference by comparing his look in the lobby to his look on the portrait. Twins' power is technically just Victor, one of the said twins. Twins are also able to move when together, but are unable to whenever separate, aside during their Mori. We see Trickster's autograph written twice, one on the G-Wounds autograph add-on, and the other during his Mori with the photo. Both, however, are very differently written. Unlike other blighted versions of characters, Nemesis seems to have whole pieces of him completely changed, such as his box or pump thing on his chest, which becomes an entirely different contraption on his blighted skin. Typically, characters have their base look but blighted, and not notable changes like this. Perhaps this is to account for it pumping blight through his body. As a bonus, Nemesis's zombies are also able to jump up some large holes, sometimes after hitting survivors. Pinhead is the only killer in the game able to actually inflict himself with his own power, or damage himself directly. He can do this by shooting a chain out, turning to face him, and firing it. This also makes him grunt. Despite Artist's tongue being severed, she is still able to produce noise from her mouth. For example, when she falls down from a height, she lets out a screech. Her severed hands depicted in an add-on are also cut much shorter than in-game, with it being almost her entire forearm. Sadako is able to hear the sounds of generators before she actually completes her teleport. This is likely down to her actual place being where she is intended to arrive before she's physically left it. She's also the only killer in the game, aside Chucky, classified as short, which is weird because she's 3 times his size. I think we need a special Chucky category of tiny. Dredge has 2 sets of skins that don't technically belong to the same set. Its base look set is mismatched with the skeletal mask set. If you take the arm piece from this set and put it onto the default look, it's actually a lot more cohesive. The same goes for the other way around, putting the default arm on the skeletal mask set. For some reason it seems these were switched at some point. Wesker has literally infinite sunglasses. When you stun him, he loses a pair, but if you continue stunning him, he literally never runs out. During this animation, the regular one is also sped up to account for him needing to place his sunglasses back on. These sunglasses also, weirdly enough, don't affect his vision in trial. Knight is listed as average height in the character description screens, despite him being far taller than many other tall characters. Knight is also weirdly undead in-game, despite him never mentioned to have died prior to the realm. His guards are also all dead, suggesting their final stand may have been an entity manipulation, with them actually falling. Skull Merchant has a number of strange interactions. For example, the drone scanning survivors without a scan line connecting with them. This one is dependent on where you're standing at the time. There's also a chance that when a drone is deployed or rotated, a survivor looking at a drone can get detected even if they weren't scanned. A sort of lore thing I always found odd too is that in her portable cabin, she has clothes that are way too small for her, and shoes too. However, the actual cabin structure is more fit to a person the size of Merchant, so either the killers are made bigger for the trials, or the survivors are actually shrunk for them. Singularity appears to hate humanity and sees humans as very flawed, and so when he goes to create the perfect life form, he seems to make it humanoid and contain almost entirely human genes. Hux also doesn't seem as intelligent as he makes out though, so maybe this is a sign. When it comes to Xenomorph, there's something quite strange about the Queen's design, and this is for her large rear, shall we say. This isn't strange in and of itself, but it is when you look at the design from the films, which doesn't have this. For Chucky, I could just go with the entirety of Seed of Chucky. One thing though that I think confused everyone was this cosmetic, and specifically the weapon. What is this? Probably some stuffing, but it's just so bizarrely displayed. Unknown has quite strange lore. It not only doesn't follow the lore's own character, the Unknown, but instead someone investigating it, Olivia. Olivia actually gets a lot wrong in its lore too, with her making incorrect connections about what the Unknown does and is, with her going off of the false basis that the Unknown was the cause of Michaela's disappearance. The only time we even see Unknown directly in its lore is the last few moments when it's being pulled into fog. So even in its own lore, we don't really know what it is. We don't really get any description of it, and the only sight we have is of some tentacles being pulled into a fog. Vecna's Decaying King outfit has no mark of negation or mark of the entity on it, which means he technically has access to his true power. Quite an oversight oversight by the entity, and a strange one. Despite this, in-game Vecna with the skin performs entirely the same. Dracula has an additional eye on his chest in the Trueform skin, however it doesn't function as an eye in the trials, and therefore is just a useless eye I guess on his chest. That's gotta be weird, right? He also doesn't use his wings for some reason, like to fly faster or up or higher, you know? That weird bug too where Dracula could become half man, half wolf is apparently still possible, so watch out. Houndmaster makes a weird reference to what seems like Clown, with one of her Moris mentioning she'll save a survivor's fingers for a pal. It's unlikely they knew each other before the realm, so they must have met inside it. This is sort of strange though, as one of the only times referenced to killers interacting. What strange things can you think of? Let me know down below. Thanks, and goodbye.